And again, very excited to have 17 folks in here today. That's great. And to start our discussion about course reserves, there has been, I think, actually multiple questions over the last year that I've been with the group about how people deal with the end of the term. So how do you deal with course end dates, running jobs, pulling materials on and off of reserves? There's probably quite a few different processes that can be used in Alma in different ways. So I'm going to open up the floor, and if anyone would like to kind of extrapolate on the question or start sharing their own processes, that would be great, and I will take notes.
So I'll jump in with what I've observed at Seattle. So first off, one of the things that's been a very, very significant difference in reserves at the Seattle colleges versus reserves at other four-year institutions that I've worked at is reserves for us are almost entirely course textbooks that stay at the library for years and years and years and years. We're not really seeing use that's more normal in other places where you have one instructor who comes in and they have a set number of things that, maybe some photocopies, maybe a book chapter, something like that, that they want you to keep for just one academic term, and then they're going to come and get it back. So because of that, reserves processes are completely different from what I've seen at other institutions, where we don't really take things off reserve every quarter. I think at one point you didn't have to have an expiration date on a reserves course in Alma, but now you do. So at this point, we're just setting the reserves expiration date way, way, way in the future, as far in the future as we possibly can. So those are some insights from what we're doing at Seattle.
I'll say something. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Okay. Is that better? So I lost my fool head over our reserves this summer, and I deleted every single reserve, and I'm starting from scratch because we had no continuity. I have books on our shelf from 8 years ago where literally the instructor has passed away. And so I'm having, I was done. So my goal this year is to do full continuity. I am leaving, they are still cataloged in Alma. I just did away with every single course reserves. And I'm starting from scratch. I am emailing every single department chair and instructor that I have figured out who those books should or possibly may belong to. I have found that if I do individual emails with their names on them and a pretty please and check yes or no as to when you want me to save them or if you want them back, I'm getting responses, but I am literally holding their hand all the way through. That's for my sanity. It's so I'm documenting everything that I'm doing this entire year. If y'all are interested at the end of the year, I'm more than happy to send everything out to you. I'll put together a PowerPoint for each one, so I have continuity. It's gonna go in the Drop Dead book. And hopefully when I beat feet, somebody else can continue what I'm doing, and hopefully things will go well. One thing I am doing, Kirsty, I am putting the end of the year, I'm putting June 14th on every single item for expiration off of the course reserves. And I'm doing that because for now, as I'm getting books in, I'm still getting books in. And I haven't added that piece to the puzzle yet of having instructors tell me when they want it back or whatever. I am also developing a new online form that will tell me what quarters they want it. At the end of the year, do you want me to reach out to you? Do you want me to wait until you come back to me? If you only want it at the end of the year, then I'll reach out to you. Tell me if this is your book and you don't want it anymore, are you going to donate it to us to put up in general stacks? I'm going to get all that information from them on each form, and that'll be housed in its lovely little folder that we have our shared drive in. And again, if I'm gone, then they can, for the next person in line, can figure out what needs to be done. That's what I'm doing.
Quite the undertaking, and I can completely understand the starting fresh. So the Seattle College situation makes me kind of wonder if anyone is using a permanent reserves location, like a behind the circ desk, it never goes off, as opposed to attaching something to a course, and how that process might be different than a specific course reserve.
So within Alma, it's only reserve in Alma terms if it's associated with a course.
Right.
You
So
can have locations
if you're
called
doing
reserves, but
course
in
reserve search scope, it's not going to pick up a location.
I'm trying to remember how we have ours. I think the course reserve scope relies on there being a course record that exists in Alma. We do both. We have reserves locations that align with the loan period, but then we also have things attached to a course record and instructor records and things like that in Alma. Karen, you were going to say something?
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry.
No.
Didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, so we have everything, for me anyway, for our course reserves, they're all textbooks. Or like our English department will put on some novels or whatever, but they're all from our instructors. I always put the permanent location as general cert, and then temporary location course reserves. And then in the item record, I'll do the permanent call number for our general cert, like whatever we do Dewey. So whatever the Dewey call number is for that. And then in the temporary, I'll do, like, right now I'm working on like FS for fire safety, and then the instructor's name, and then the course number, and then the publication date. So like fire science 115 Lackey, and then whatever, publishing date 2022 or something, whatever. And then I'm also building a course reserves with oh, what's it called? Course reserve and then reading list. And with those reading lists, I'm putting in instructors. Now, if I have one book that a bunch of different instructors are going to use for a bunch of different classes, like Little Seagull for English, I'll do English all and the publication date so that they know which one is the newest, because we have like 3, whatever editions. So I'm building both. Again, they're still going to expire at the end of spring quarter. Does that help?
I like the idea of English all. I like that for all the instructors.
And this was inspired by a question from Ashley about end of term. And it sounds like most people are not like, you're not taking anything off at end of term. If you get requests, things go on, and then maybe stuff comes off at the end of the term. But Ashley, are you experiencing like significant change in like what the reserves items are from quarter to quarter, that like things would need to come off for space reasons or findability or something?
I think for us, we had, such a period of closure during the pandemic, and the person in my position retired. So we haven't had like a full maintenance of our reserves collection. So I've been slowly working through that. And they're separated both by department and then an individual instructor. So I find that the individual instructor reserves change quite a bit more. The department specific items tend to sit on the shelves for a lot longer, but it's also much more difficult to get engagement from those departments. So I just kind of feel like I'm figuring it out as I go here. And I'm kind of in a similar situation with Karen, where I'm updating accounts and trying to find continuity. But yeah, it's been an adventure. I hope I answered the question you just asked.
Yeah, and that makes kind of my next little thing of like, so Ashley had asked me too if I could help her out with some analytics. And so if you're not quite feeling as bold as Karen as far as like taking things off, I am working on some analytics reports that should be relatively adaptable to various, like your different codes for things, to get the circulation of items that have been on reserves. But in order to make it adaptable, I am very much still in process on those. So I will keep you all updated. But I suspect that, like no matter who runs the report on the reserves, in my experience at so many colleges, there's very little use of anything besides the most major textbooks. Yeah, I always put stuff on reserve as a faculty member and checked the circ on it, and I'm like, okay. I mean, like maybe you guys paid $3 for that Amazon DVD, or maybe you all watched it together in the library, but I don't think so.
Well, and I'll mention with Canvas, article management is so much easier for the faculty themselves. They get a copy of the article, they link to it in their Canvas course, they scan it, they upload it to their Canvas course. The library doesn't have to be involved. And yeah, realistically, my experience teaching has been similar to yours, Carly, where like you can put things on reserve, but students aren't going to use it unless you make them.
How many of you guys at your other schools purchase textbooks out of your own budget, or does it, do you only get donations from instructors? Because we buy books for reserves. Much to my chagrin.
Our student government started a program called the Textbook Access Program, and people will request textbooks and they will buy them and put them on reserve. So that was very helpful.
That is a great partnership, because too often I've seen student governments want to spend that money and then they don't have any system of monitoring the checkout, and so they go missing or they never get checked out. It would be interesting to do a survey on who buys textbooks, who will accept textbooks for reserves or for CERC or reference, and who doesn't mess with them at all. But
Our library does not buy textbooks at all. We've been holding off on doing that. We've been asked, but we're still holding off. The instructors had to provide them, or they can also pull ones off our out of our stacks in our collection, and we'll put those on reserve for a class. We found a great many reserves being pulled and returned, especially after the pandemic. So many OERs are available, and there aren't that many textbooks being used now, frankly. And most of our people asking for them are at the very beginning of the quarter when they haven't gotten their financial aid or the book isn't available in the bookstore. But our reserves have really dropped off.
and where are you at?
Yakima.
Yeah, and I mean, I do feel like Washington State has a pretty strong open ed kind of initiative.
Mhm.
So I kind of wonder how that has impacted, and but technical question. And this is one that I tried to figure out, but since I haven't really played with it, and maybe Ashley can help. But so when you do change the end of a course date, and it changes the books to inactive, and correct me if I'm reading this wrong, Ashley. How are you flipping the courses back to active and then getting the items back to active? Because I couldn't really find the documentation on like what to do at the end of a course in the Alma stuff, and didn't want to like build a whole course reserves and reading list thing in the sandbox just to test stuff. So if anyone knows what I just said and it made sense to them and would like to weigh in, or Ashley, if you want to clarify a little bit.
I feel like you said it perfectly. I'm not sure if this is like a user error that I ran into this quarter, or if it's something that Alma just doesn't want to do. So yeah, I'm curious to hear what everyone.
I think the reading lists have a due back date, and I don't know how they work or if they actually work. But and then so anything you put on that reading list would expire or would not be seen after the due back date. In theory.
If you update that due back date, does that reactivate it?
What I was doing was I created a job, and let me pull up Alma so I can accurately say what I'm doing here. But
And if anyone wants to share their screen, that you can. I've got that permission up. So if you want to, if that helps. Sorry.
let's see. So I was going into we're going obviously into admin, run a job, and I was using the well, there's the reading list book update, and then I was using and then there's the course bulk update. So I feel like I could accurately like change the end date, but Alma wouldn't actually change it to active, even though the date was within, a future range. So
Abby and Linda, it looks like you're like investigating to see if that's something that affects your stuff.
We totally are. You caught us. Like, do we have that? I don't know. Yeah.
So if others aren't experiencing like that weirdness, you must be using some different like setting or process then.
Well, we're trying to look. You had a question, Linda?
Oh, well, to be honest, I didn't know that the reading list had a due date. That was brand new to me.
Like, oh.
So,
But is it the reading list that had the due date, or there was, but the items also had it?
I'm
As-
mostly like concerned about the course itself being active and inactive. But it is very confusing. Like I feel like I'm learning a new language a little bit with some of this stuff, which
So for schools that are not taking books off of reserves and reserves require a course they're attached to, then are the courses just like staying in there with like the course number they were put in with when the thing first went on? Or like
Yes.
Karen's idea of like English all? They just stay under English all.
In our cases, or in our case, the courses stick around forever, I think. I'll go and see if I can get a screenshot, but there's like there's some place in a citation record where you can assign multiple courses and multiple instructors. So that's what we do in a situation where something is being used by lots of different courses, I think. And Lorana's got some stuff in the chat about what they're doing at Edmonds.
Well, and Linda has also added to the chat, so I'm kind of just putting that in the document, make it easier to find later.
So I was just looking at our reserves. So as Ashley said, so in Bellevue, we can use the end date in courses to make a course active or inactive. For the reading list, though, there's a place you can put in the due back date. However, I I looked at one reading list. The due back date was in 2021, and I searched the course in Primo, and the items still show up. So it looks like the due back dates for a reading list really doesn't do anything. And there's no due back date for items, but reading list, the reading lists do have due back dates, but I don't know how. I'm not sure how they work. It seems not working with. We have an expired date yet. If you search by course in Primo, you can still see the items in that reading list.
Do you want me to share my screen for a sec? I can show you our counterpart over at the Falls, Spokane Falls. I built those a long time ago when I was working there. And there are a couple different places you can do this. Where's my share? I have 15 windows open. Okay, can you see that? Okay, so this is for Spokane Falls. We can see the name of the class, which department, and who's processing it. Of course, it's inactive. And the end date was 2020. If I click on that course that was built, I can see all of this, the department, but we can see the date that I started it was 2016. The end date was supposed to be 2020. And so that is going to make almost super slow today, guys. That's going to make this inactive. So we know that this class for some, because I don't know if it's still ever a class or if they're just not using these anymore. But if I go here to the reading list, this was the instructor. This is another class that, I don't know, maybe another instructor at some point put it on there, but they didn't want to put their name on there. I don't know. So if I open this, we can see all the due dates back, and I can view it. And they withdrew this book because there is no physical item, but they never removed it from the reading list. So it's going to be funky when you go to look for this book because it's going to say, yeah, I'm here, but I'm really not. Joke's on you. And we can see what course it's attached to. If anybody put any notes in here, I might put in, you can put in a license in here on recent changes or whatever. But this is where the due date, let me go back. Here is, oh yeah, due date back right here. So that's also going to make that, it doesn't say, does it say expired? Can't remember. I don't think it says expired. Yeah, it just says the date. So this is like really way over. This, frankly, should be completely removed. There's only one title attached to this is the reading list. There's only one title attached to this course. And so, delete this, remove it, save it, and then delete the course. Because nobody has a book attached to it. Does that make sense? Questions, comments?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of how we've been doing it. Yeah.
Some of you have puzzled looks on your faces.
So if you got a course that has end date over and it's switched over to inactive, and you then move the start date and end date to encompass the current time frame, does it not automatically go active again?
Because
It does.
It's
Supposed to.
supposed to. Yeah, so if I were to, we're just gonna mess with their stuff here, because I don't have boundaries apparently. Put it here. And that was accounting 140. Yeah, right there.
So it went back, but then for some reason, like Ashley, when you use the bulk update to change those dates, it's not going back to active.
Right. So
That
I think
sounds
the
like
quarter
an ex-libris ticket.
maybe, yeah. The quarter before, I think I just ended up manually, updating them one by one, which was a little tedious. But we'll try again and see if maybe it is just something bugging.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And when you ran the job, one of the things that I've kind of learned with our work in the norm rules and cataloging group is that, like, if the job set doesn't have the right data to attach, even though you think it's like identifying, for example, the courses that you're changing, it might not actually do anything. It would be interesting to look at the events of the job, that course bulk update job, and see if it actually, like, it may have said, record processed successfully, but if you go into events, it should list out every single one and what it changed. And if it doesn't, it may not have actually properly identified the courses to update.
That's a really good point.
I'll just say that it's been many years since I've messed with reserves, but back when we first migrated to Alma in the first couple of years, I would have to ask Wade to run a job through an API that to update course dates and stuff like that. So there is an API out there that does the full job, but yeah, it's been many years, so I don't know the functionality of the job to update course reserves.
I'm wondering if I've got any notes on that. So it looks like Wade saved like he has extracts of people's lists, and there's also some documentation of a few people's processes, which I could link to the documentation part, not the random list thing. So I'll do that. Abby, you have a question?
Yeah, I wondered about instructors. So we revamped our course reserve system, not too awful long ago, and really liked getting in touch with people and being like, do you want this still? Do you not want this? That kind of relationship piece. But we haven't added any of that information, like the instructors' names, to any of our courses or our reading lists at all. And I wondered about folks' experience with doing so, because of turnover, because of good relations management, because there's automatic letters and things, just what others' experiences were with adding like Alma identity type of names to courses or reading lists.
Having the instructors' names in Alma can be really, really helpful. I got a question a week or two ago from North about, can we get a list of everything that's currently on reserve right now? And we want to check in with faculty. And having that instructor name not only told us who to contact, but there were a whole bunch of situations where there is no longer an instructor name because when we switched to CTC Link, the record got deleted. So now we have a couple of courses where we have a long string of numbers instead of an instructor name. And that tells us that person is no longer here and hasn't been here since we migrated to CTC Link. So having the instructor names in there can be really, really helpful for long-term management.
It can also be a nice facet to add as a prompt in statistics. So anything you can add, department, course number, instructor name, those can all be prompts so that you can provide that information outside the library when asked.
There's also a place where you can put notes saying book provided by instructor return after use, or instructor donates to library after whatever end year or quarter or whatever, to be put in general cert, or please discard. A lot of our medical textbooks are discarded after 2 years because they're out of date so quickly, and they don't even want them in the general collection because that's a moot point. So having those notes in there as well is really nice to know. We don't necessarily, because we do buy books, textbooks for instructors, we don't necessarily want to relinquish them back to the instructors just because they're not using that book anymore. And if we don't have a note as to who purchased or provided that book, then half the time it goes back to that department, even though it should not. I'll be right back.
Ashley asked, because the question of like letters came up. Is anyone using automated letters for instructors? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no, because letter configuration is just such a fun aspect of Alma. But maybe somebody is.
I kind of have a form email. I made a spreadsheet of our reserves, and that lists the information on one side of if the instructor wants it back, if they want it donated, discarded, also with dates, and their email address is on there also with the direct link. So I send out kind of a form email. It's personalized, but it's just the same thing to each instructor that has a book on reserve.
So you have templates and spreadsheets outside of Alma
Yes.
to manage all of that.
Yes. And that works best for me. Like I said, we have very few reserves. So we're down to 1/3 of what we had. So it makes it a lot easier to do it that way for me. And again, with trying to formulate a letter on Alma is, you don't want to do that.
Okay, that makes me feel better that I'm not the only one not using the automated lists, because they're terrifying to me. But also, I just think it's one of those things that I can see the utility of it, and I think in theory it could be so great, but is it worth the upkeep and the startup? I'm not.
Right.
On stats, if anyone would like to, like, I'm gonna add a little section down here in the bottom of the document called like stats questions. And if you wanna comment down here on things you would be interested in, like gathering from your course reserves, and then I can kind of work on that in analytics. Or if you just want to like say something or put it in chat and I can add it as well. But just because you know, like sending reports to instructors, do you know, like, are having stats for external reports part of why you need it? Or is it internal, you know, like managing the process, cleaning up the process, completely starting from scratch on the process? Because framing internal and external usage can be, you know, a very different analytics report. You know, so any kind of, you know, feedback or guidance on what would be helpful for you guys is great and gives me a direction on development.
I have a question, Carly. This isn't quite about stats, but it made me think of it. One of the other things that we did is we looked for electronic versions of our physical resources to try to promote those collections too. Could we use not analytics, but the collection overlap and collection analysis tool to find some of those types of things? I'm not sure how we've done it totally in the past, but
yes, there is a tool for doing like electronic version maps. As we know, the overlap analysis tool is kind of a pain because title match is sometimes the highest percentage of accuracy and it's still not all that great. But I can definitely look into that because I feel like there is something.
You can previous web page.
Because in order to use overlap analysis for that, you would have to export your title list from course reserves and then like use that and make sure that that spreadsheet was appropriately formatted in order for overlap analysis tool to recognize it. And yeah, it'd be a whole thing. And I know there's got to be something faster.
Okay. I see we're almost at the end of the meeting. This is Xinhang from Bellevue. I have a question related to reserves, but not to you, to stats. And I was wondering what are the fine policies on reserves in your library? Our library, we charged fines before COVID, and when we came back from COVID, when we first opened it, there were so few checkouts in reserves that we just waived the fines, and we're actually still doing that. Now it's been more than a year, and so I was wondering if your library charges late fees on reserves.
Not Yakima Valley College. We do not.
Okay.
But our books do stay in the library, so they're, you know, really not overdue because they never go out. So. Okay.
We don't. We had our security gate removed. I mean, maybe a year ago. So we now do not know whether something is being taken out or not. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So does Bellevue College still charge for overdues?
No, we don't charge overdues for daily checkout or
Okay.
circulating items.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
But but reserves, because if it's a 2-hour reserve and it's gone for 3 days, then other students won't be able to use it.
Right.
Do other people have different lengths of checkout times? So we have a 2-hour in library use, we have a one or 2 day, and then a 1 week. So the one in 1 week and the 1 day they can take out of the library, but 2 hours obviously they can't.
We have a couple of items that do that at YVC. We have the 2-hour one and 1 3-day one, and we also have a week one, but there's none on reserve right now for that.
Is that because you have multiple copies?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like if you set up your lost profile for reserves to trigger quicker, then a replacement fee would trigger, but you wouldn't get the fines. But after working with a few folks on lost profiles and late profiles, that can be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, our lost item profile, the interval is only 3 days, but they get ignored sometimes. We have had students like check out, keep things for a whole quarter or for weeks.
Right.
I have a circulation related but not reserves related question for the group. And I was wondering if I could ask it now. At Renton Tech, we're going to be hiring several work study students, and it's enough to make setting up a role profile look like it's going to be a good idea. And I was wondering if there were any recommendations for setting up role profiles for student workers. For example, do you allow them the user manager role?
Talk to Melinda from SEC. I will loop her in. She's been doing our setup for our work studies. Let me see if I can bounce her on here real quick.
Okay, Melinda.
Let's see if she can.
Laura, I can also contact you afterwards and give you some information about the profiles that we have set up for our student workers.
Oh, I would appreciate that.
So at Bellevue, our student workers used to have the operator limited role where they can only, check out and check in materials. But then we changed our policy temporarily, but now it's been the last couple of years, is that we used to check out our books for 3 weeks and magazines for 1 week. And we are now checking them out for the entire quarter. So they're not, we're not using the default policy we have on those items. So in order for the student workers to change the due date after they check out items, I've changed their role from operator limited to operator, so that they don't have to bring items to staff to change them, so they can change them at the front desk. And that's something we also need to decide whether we continue to check out items for the quarter or we change them back to our original configuration of 3 weeks, 1 week.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say, in my experience, I haven't known of any like student circulation that had user manager privileges, just because the chance that something gets messed up in a user account, or that a user account gets created improperly, like they were allowed to, like fill out paper forms to register a community user, but then that form was verified by our actual search director, manager. And if there were issues with a student's account, they also weren't allowed to like override expiration or do anything except like pay fines, which you don't have to have user manager privileges for.
Okay, thank you.
We had enough problems with people looking up phone numbers of people they thought were attractive with the search operator privilege. So yeah.
We were wondering about that. We were wondering if there had been abuses that had caused limitations.
Limited, but it happens.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, this is good. Seattle student workers get Circ Desk Operator Limited and Request Operator, and then they expire at the start of the following quarter. Which seems like a pretty reasonable like expiration management given quarterly student turnover potentially.
Yeah, because usually if somebody's working the quarter, they work the break after the quarter as well. So
But
that
may
gets
not
them
be
to the
back.
break. Yep.
Okay, that's a good idea, and I'm going to do that.
Our front desk computers, we use a generic operator, so it's not tied to a particular student. So we created accounts for like a circulation 1 and 2 and 3. So, and they have their roles of circulation operator. It's not tied to a specific or particular student or anybody.
I wonder if our CTS department would let us do that. That's an interesting thought.
I know Big Ben does that. They have a Circ Desk account.
Yeah, it's an internal account, so you just create your own, and then yeah.
Let's see. Student. Okay, thank you, everybody. This has been very helpful.
Well, it is just about 2 o'clock. I think that course reserves is definitely something that warrants ongoing attention and sharing of knowledge. So it was great to see all of you, and I hope that we can have another course reserve themed discussion, or perhaps some kind of like workshop on a, standardization of process or something. And if you'd like to continue to ask questions to this group, everyone is welcome to subscribe to the Whack to Click Alma listserv. And if you don't know how to subscribe to that, you could probably just Google Whack to Click Alma listserv and get to it, or you can email me and I will send you the link to subscribe, and then you can send your questions out to the larger group, who is always very helpful, and great environment if you're not already on that list.
Hey,
So,
Carly.
yeah.
Regarding that, it seems like, and I don't know if this is normal or not, it seems like I have like a 1 to 2 day delay on that listserv. So like, it seems like Cara Beth will like get it and then she'll be like, oh, did you see this? And I'll be like, I haven't seen it yet. And then it'll pop up like the next afternoon or something like that. Is that normal? Can that be fixed?
Is it normal? Probably, because it's managed by the CTC like system, and I think that it functions wildly differently, because there are times when I don't get things for 2 days.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me.
Nope. And I would also say that that's one of the reasons that I would like in the future to move toward Google groups. Be warned, cautioned, the Alma listserv is public, so do not post FERPA information. Do not do screenshots with identifying information. Yet another reason why I want to go to a Google group, because then it would be a private closed group. But yeah, I think delivery from that CTC server and those listservs is a little weird sometimes.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, well, feel free to add questions to the document or email them to the group or to me. Add your examples and be on the lookout for the next CERC meeting, and have a great week. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.